You know, when a national tragedy strikes, a country instinctively turns to social media. It's where we grieve, where we organize, and where we try to get answers. But what happens when that collective roar of attention just fades to a whisper, almost overnight? Well, this is the story of that digital echo, as seen through the lens of Twitter.
Let's start with the only number that really, truly matters, 301. Before we dive into any of the data, we have to remember this number. It represents the 301 lives that were lost in the Soma mine disaster in Turkey. It is the human heart of this entire story.
So on that day, as the news first broke, the death toll was still a complete unknown. And in that awful void of information, with rescue operations frantically underway, social media, and specifically Twitter, it became the main channel where an entire nation was trying to process what was happening in real time. So how exactly does a national tragedy unfold online? Well, in those first few chaotic hours, people were using the platform to meet two really fundamental, very human needs. On one hand, it became this absolutely vital source of informational support. You had people desperately sharing any news they could find, any rescue updates, but at the exact same time, it was this massive vehicle for emotional support, a kind of digital town square for organizing prayer sessions and just sharing these overwhelming messages of grief and solidarity. And the scale of this response, it was just staggering. We're not talking about a small ripple of activity here. This was a full-on digital tidal wave. And the data behind it is just immense. Look at this, almost 1.4 million. That's how many tweets used the keyword Soma in a single day on May 15th, 2014. It's just a staggering volume of conversation, grief, and anger, all converging at once. But what's really interesting here is when this peak happened. See, it wasn't on day one, it was 2 days later. And you have to ask why. Well, it's because this was the moment the true, horrifying scale of the tragedy became clear, as the death toll officially passed 250. This data point, it really reflects a nation's shock turning into this massive public outcry. Now, you'd think that kind of massive engagement would create some sustained momentum for support and charity campaigns, right? Well, this is where the study reveals something truly fascinating, and honestly, for aid organizations, it's pretty challenging. That roar, it very quickly became just an echo. I mean, you can see the drop-off so clearly right here. That initial peak was nearly 1.4 million tweets. Then you get to a charity soccer match in August, and it's less than 54,000. A really heartfelt Father's Day campaign for the children who lost their dads, just 48,000. The contrast is just stark. The researchers' own conclusion sums it up perfectly. As they put it, none of the support activities captured broader public participation. The goodwill was there, no question. The efforts were valuable, but that initial explosion of attention, it was gone. So here's the bottom line. The collective energy for all these organized support campaigns was only about 4% of that initial peak, which was really driven by grief and outrage. It turns out the digital world's attention span can be incredibly brief. Now, this massive data set of 6.3 million tweets, it presented a really unique opportunity for the researchers. They started asking, could we use artificial intelligence to figure out what makes a tweet about a disaster actually cut through all the noise? Could we predict virality? And the tool they decided to use for this was a technology called deep learning. Really, you can just think of it as a super powerful pattern recognition machine. They fed it millions of words from all these tweets, and it started to learn the subtle ingredients, the textural patterns that separated a viral tweet from one that just got ignored. So, the process was pretty straightforward. First, they collected thousands of tweets and labeled them as either high impact or low impact. Then, they trained their AI on most of that data, just letting it learn the patterns. And finally, they tested it on the rest to see if it could accurately predict a tweet's impact all on its own. And the results? A 73% accuracy rate. Now, what that means is the AI could predict, with pretty remarkable success, whether a brand new tweet would resonate widely during a crisis based only on the words it contained. That's incredible. Okay, so we have this massive but really fleeting digital echo, and we also have technology that can start to predict what cuts through the noise. So what are the crucial lessons here for crisis communication? All right, let's pull this all together. What have we learned? Well, we've definitely learned that the digital spotlight in a crisis is intense, but man, it moves on fast. We've seen that raw initial emotion drives way more engagement than structured campaigns later on, and that's the core challenge for aid organizations that need sustained attention. And finally, we've seen a potential tool that could help AI that can help craft messages more likely to capture that fleeting attention.
And this is really why this all matters. I mean, these insights aren't just academic. They can give policymakers, NGOs, and emergency responders a real advantage. By understanding these dynamics, they can start to craft more effective communication strategies to keep us all engaged when it matters most.
Which, of course, leaves us with this final, crucial question. The technology clearly exists to connect all of us in a moment of shared grief. But if that attention is always destined to fade, the real challenge for all of us is figuring out how to convert that powerful, temporary digital unity into meaningful, lasting action.